And can you take us to the moment you're talking with Bill Burr and Patrice O'Neal at the same time? Is this? I guess you're used to it because you like
Uh,
developed in New York, but like as comedians, we hear these names and we're like, wait, what?
so I started, so when I moved to New York, so I was in Chicago, then I moved to New York with Pete Holmes. I did exactly Crashing. I did that with Pete
That's
Holmes.
so
I
cool.
barked at Boston Comedy Club with Pete. Pete got me barking. And so we stood on the corner and all that stuff. So that's where Bill and Patrice and them would come in. So Patrice I think, would have been probably one of the greatest ever. And
Yeah.
he's like, I would, if you could bring someone back alive, I mean, I would bring him back over anybody, over Chris Farley. Like, I just want to hear what he has to say about
Hmm.
everything. But I went to their HBO One Night Stand taping. They both did a half hour, and I watched that. And I used to sit in Patrice would park his car, and I would sit in it in case. So I'd move it if a cop came, because he would park it. You can't. There's no parking. And so I would just sit in it and drive around the block if a cop came. When they were running their half hours, I would time their sets. Like, I
What?
timed Patrice's. Well, he did not ask me to do it. I would just do it, like, like the eager comedian, and you're just trying to be helpful, and you're
Right.
like, I was like, hey man, I know you only got to do 30 minutes, so I timed your set. You were like at 33 minutes, and I remember he was like, all right, and then just kind of walked away. Like, it was because he didn't ask for that. And now that I know, like, in my head, I've never done anything TV wise, so I thought you had to be exactly at that time. But for that HBO one, I said, you're like, yeah, dude, he could have done 45 minutes and they would cut it down to 30. Like,
Hmm.
it didn't really matter. And, and so, but it was watching those guys was huge. That's my guy. That's my biggest, I mean, luckily now I'm friends with Burr, and, I don't talk to him a ton, but I've been me and Burr, good. I went with him on the road,
That's awesome.
but he was the guy that was huge for me. Like, I watched, because he was one of the first guys where he was like kind of hitting his stride in the clubs. I mean, I remember the first Letterman he ever did. I was barking, like handing out flyers on the corner for Boston Comedy Club, and I remember turning. And I was like, hey, we got a great comedy show. And I gave one to Bill Burr. And I was like, ah, man, I'm so sorry. I was like embarrassed. Like, I was like, I'm so sorry. I just didn't. I was just kind of turned, like I didn't know. And then he was like, it's fine, man. He's like, and he was doing his first Letterman, and he was like, hey, I need to go run it. Do you know any shows? And I mean, of course, like, I'm a new comic, so I'm like, yeah, dude, there's this show and this show, and I'm like telling him all the shows that he could go to run it. Uh, but he was like a big deal because he was the first guy that when I came to New York, your like world is open up to, like, when before you start comedy, all you know is like Seinfeld or Cosby or, whoever the famous Chris Rock. You don't know about guys that you don't know who they are. And then when you get into comedy and you start seeing people, like I saw Bill Burr, who's nobody at this point, not even, he's about to do his first Letterman. And I'm like blown away. Like, I'm like, this is bananas, dude. I mean, the first same way with Brian Regan. First time I heard Brian Regan's CD, I just couldn't wrap my head around, because it was 2003. So he's not famous. He's probably selling out comedy clubs, or he is selling out comedy clubs at that point. But I remember hearing it, and I just couldn't believe. I was like, how is this guy not the most famous person alive? Like, I didn't understand. I was like, this is the funniest human being I've ever heard in my life. How is he not just? How is he not like on Mount Rush? Like,
Of
it's like, this
course.
guy's. It's crazy, dude. No one's as funny as this guy. So your world gets expanded, and you're like, oh, everybody. There's a lot of really, really good comedians, and so then you get to sit. And I just watched Bill Burr a lot. I watched Burr, I mean, obsessively. I'd watch him at all the clubs. I'd watch him. I remember going to Caroline's, and he's not even had the room's not even sold out at Caroline's. I remember his Opie and Anthony, the famous Philadelphia incident. I remember when it happened, he came back and was telling us about it before it kind of blew up on YouTube.
Wow.
We were asking, he was like, the show was crazy. Like, I mean, he was, not that I've really ever told him any of this stuff, because obviously I wouldn't. It'd be very weird and awkward. Yeah, we've set alone too. I mean, I've asked him questions. Like, I've talked to him about like those days, because I did kind of tell him like how, like, seeing him and Patrice and asking about, just because I was a younger comic watching all that. and asking him about that stuff. But it was, but yeah, I mean, he was everything, man. It's one of the biggest deals for me was, and that I still do watch him is just to watch his path.
Hey, hot brethren and sistren, if you love comedy as much as we do here at Hot Breath, click the subscribe button to join the Hot Breathiverse, and then watch more videos to get even more comedy tips. Hot Breath.